In the grand halls of the alien palace, the tension was thick with anticipation. The queen, a towering figure of grace and intellect, stood at the center of the royal chamber, surrounded by her closest advisors and an audience of high-ranking officials from across the empire. The moment was meant to be a celebration, the crowning event in a series of grand ceremonies marking her reign's triumphs. But no one could have predicted what would happen next. The queen, usually calm and composed, suddenly stumbled. Her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the polished marble floor with a heavy thud. A gasp spread through the crowd, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. Her advisors rushed to her side, but they too were frozen, unsure of what to do. The royal physician, a tall and stern alien named Vernak, knelt beside her quickly, his hands already reaching for the pulse in her neck. For a heartbeat, the silence was deafening. The physician's expression shifted from confusion to fear. The queen's pulse was weak, faint, dangerously so. Her breathing, labored and uneven, left no question that something was terribly wrong. "Get the medical team! Now!" Vernak barked, his voice filled with urgency. The chaos that followed felt like a blur. Guards, attendants, and aides scrambled to assist, but the queen's condition didn't improve. Her once sharp and commanding gaze had faded into unconsciousness, and the glow of her powerful presence was no longer visible. Meanwhile, in the back of the room, one of the queen's guards stood still. Marcus, a young human soldier assigned to her protection, had been observing the ceremony from a distance. He had seen many strange things in his time with the alien empire, but nothing prepared him for what he witnessed now. As others frantically worked to revive the queen, Marcus's gaze never wavered from her pale face. He had been assigned to protect her during this special event, a minor detail in the grand scheme of things. Humans were rarely more than a footnote in the royal palace, their presence seen more as a form of diplomacy than a necessity. But today, for reasons he couldn't explain, he felt drawn to her. There was something in the air that made him feel as if this was different from all the other events he had witnessed. His eyes, sharp and observant, noticed something unusual. As the queen was lifted by her attendants, Marcus saw a faint, almost imperceptible twitch in her fingers, a slight tremor, almost like a spasm. He knew nothing of alien physiology, but he recognized that something wasn't right. That small, seemingly insignificant detail stayed in his mind as the crowd around him continued to panic. The medical team arrived shortly after, carrying advanced equipment and tools he could not even begin to understand. Their leader, a tall, blue-skinned alien with long white hair, moved quickly to assess the queen's condition. Marcus's thoughts raced. He had seen this kind of desperation before, back when his own world faced natural disasters. He knew how quickly the situation could spiral out of control, how fear could turn the most organized place into a disorganized mess. "Step aside, all of you," the blue-skinned alien ordered. He spoke with authority, but there was no mistaking the concern in his voice. Marcus, however, remained where he was. He wasn't going to move unless told to. His job was to protect the queen, and that meant staying alert and focused. His mind whirred as he tried to think of what could have caused such a sudden and severe collapse. He'd seen the queen in action countless times, commanding with the strength of a force of nature, and yet now she lay in front of him as fragile as any human. The physician, Vernak, leaned over her, pressing several devices to her chest. The alien assistants stood at attention, waiting for any signs of improvement, but none came. After a long moment, Vernak looked up at the gathered crowd, his face pale. "There's no explanation for this," he murmured, though his words were loud enough for the room to hear. "Her heart rate is failing, and none of our technology can detect the source. We don't know why this is happening." The crowd was stunned. Whispers spread like wildfire, but there was no immediate action. The queen had been the pillar of strength in the empire for as long as anyone could remember. She was more than just a ruler. She was a symbol of their civilization's unyielding might. And now, she was vulnerable. The thought sent a chill through Marcus's spine. He watched as the blue-skinned alien and his team continued their work, trying in vain to stabilize the Queen. They hooked her up to strange devices, analyzing every heartbeat and fluctuation, but there were no answers. The Queen's heart had simply stopped working the way it should. Marcus had no medical expertise, but something in his gut told him that this was no ordinary health crisis. The way the Queen had collapsed, the strange tremor in her fingers, it didn't sit right with him. Something felt off, as if there was more to the story than anyone realized. His thoughts were interrupted by the blue-skinned alien, who turned to the others and spoke in a low, almost defeated tone. "We need to get her to the healing chambers. Maybe the medics there will have better tools." The group moved quickly, lifting the Queen carefully onto a stretcher and transporting her out of the grand hall. The room was left in a stunned silence, broken only by the hurried footsteps of those still trying to comprehend what had just happened. Marcus remained where he was, his eyes locked on the empty space where the Queen had collapsed. His mind raced, filled with questions. How had this happened? Was this simply an accident? Or was there something more to this sudden collapse? The fact that no one had answers only made the situation more terrifying. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that this incident was far from over. He had to know more. Something inside him pushed him to uncover the truth, to find out why the Queen, the heart of the alien empire, had been struck down so suddenly. And for the first time, Marcus realized that this mission might be far more dangerous than anything he had ever faced before. As the last of the medical team disappeared down the corridor with the Queen, Marcus took a deep breath. He knew one thing for certain. He couldn't let this go. Whatever was happening, he was going to find out the truth. Days had passed since the Queen's collapse in the royal hall, but the air in the palace still felt heavy. The grand palace, which had once been filled with vibrant energy and voices of celebration, now stood silent, almost haunted. The Queen had been rushed to the royal healing chambers, where a team of elite medical experts worked tirelessly to stabilize her. Yet despite their best efforts, no one could explain what had happened to her. The Queen's condition had remained critical. She was still unconscious, her vital signs fluctuating, and the royal physicians were at a loss. They had run every test and used every piece of advanced technology they had at their disposal, but nothing had revealed the cause of the Queen's sudden heart attack. There was no sign of illness, no poison, no visible trauma, just the unexplainable failure of her heart. The palace was on edge, and rumors of the Queen's condition spread quickly. Whispers about a potential assassination attempt and fears of instability within the empire grew louder with each passing hour. The royal guard stood watch at every door, preventing anyone from entering the healing chambers, but even they were uncertain about what was happening behind those guarded walls. For Marcus, the young human guard assigned to the Queen's protection, the days had been torturous. He had stood by and watched as the palace doctors struggled to save the Queen, unable to offer any assistance. Though he had no medical training, his instincts told him that something was amiss. It wasn't just that the Queen had collapsed. It was the strange, subtle signs he had witnessed before the incident. The twitch in her fingers, the faint spasm. It was as if someone or something had set the stage for this event. He had always been just another guard, an outsider to the alien world. But now he found himself deeply entwined in something that felt bigger than anything he had ever faced. He couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in his chest that something was wrong, something hidden, something far more dangerous than anyone realized. As the days wore on, Marcus couldn't help but continue his quiet observations. He had grown more restless and uneasy, and his thoughts kept returning to the moment when the Queen had collapsed. The medical team had failed to find any answers, and the palace was growing more desperate for a solution. It was during one of these quiet moments, as he walked through the palace corridors on routine patrol, that Marcus stumbled upon something that would change everything. It was late at night when Marcus made his way through the labyrinth of halls, his boots echoing softly against the marble floors. The palace was quieter than usual, with most of the staff resting or on break. He had been tasked with guarding the passageways near the Queen's chambers, but as he passed an unmarked door, something caught his eye. A small flicker of light spilled out from beneath the door. His curiosity piqued. Marcus hesitated for a moment. He knew he shouldn't be snooping around. His job was to stand guard, not pry into the inner workings of the royal palace. But something inside him urged him to investigate, to uncover whatever secret was hidden behind that door. He looked around to ensure no one was watching and slowly approached the door, his hand gently brushing against the cool metal. The door was slightly ajar, just enough for Marcus to slip inside unnoticed. He carefully pushed it open, stepping into the dimly lit room. It was a small, inconspicuous office filled with papers and files scattered across a desk. A lone lamp cast a soft glow over the room, and there, in the center of the desk, was a stack of medical documents. They appeared to be reports related to the Queen's health. Marcus's heart raced as he scanned the papers. They were written in the complex alien script, but his training had taught him enough to understand the basics. As he flipped through the documents, his eyes were drawn to one particular file. It was marked with the Queen's name and an unusual notation. Confidential. Do not share. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. What he saw made his blood run cold. The document detailed a medical condition that had been affecting the Queen for several months. At first glance, it appeared to be a simple heart condition, one that could be treated with regular monitoring and medication, but as Marcus read further, he noticed something that didn't sit right. The Queen's condition wasn't just a medical issue, it was a carefully concealed ailment hidden from the public eye. It was a slow, progressive deterioration of her heart, brought on by an unknown factor. But there was something even more troubling in the document. Someone with access to the Queen's private medical records had been tampering with her treatments. The reports were deliberately altered to hide the true nature of her condition. What was even more suspicious was the fact that the changes seemed to align perfectly with the Queen's collapse during the ceremony. It was as if someone had been orchestrating the deterioration of her health all along, carefully manipulating her condition to reach a critical point. Marcus felt his stomach churn. This wasn't a natural illness, it was sabotage. But who would want to harm the Queen? And why had this been kept hidden for so long? His mind raced as he sifted through the rest of the documents. The more he read, the clearer it became that this was no accident. There was a conspiracy at play. Someone in the palace had been working against the Queen, deliberately weakening her. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the implications of what he had discovered. If the Queen's health had been intentionally sabotaged, then the palace, the empire itself, could be on the brink of disaster. The sound of footsteps approaching the office door snapped Marcus back to reality. He quickly stuffed the documents back into their folder, his pulse quickening. He couldn't let anyone catch him here. He needed to leave, and fast. Marcus moved quietly toward the door, carefully easing it open. As he stepped into the hallway, he glanced over his shoulder one last time. The weight of what he had uncovered settled on his shoulders. He had no proof, only suspicion, but he knew one thing for certain. Something was very wrong in the palace. The discovery had shaken Marcus to his core. The documents he had found in the small office were a key piece of the puzzle, but they raised far more questions than answers. Who would want to harm the Queen? And why had they been so careful to keep this secret hidden for so long? Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every corner he turned in the palace felt like a trap. Every whisper seemed to carry an edge of suspicion. He wasn't just a guard anymore. He had become a part of something far bigger, a tangled web of deceit and treachery that threatened not just the queen, but the entire empire. He spent the following days quietly observing his fellow guards, the palace staff, and anyone who might have had access to the queen's private matters. No one seemed out of place, and yet Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that someone within the palace was playing a dangerous game. Whoever was behind this was well-positioned and intelligent, able to manipulate the queen's health without anyone noticing. He kept his discoveries to himself for now. He couldn't risk alerting anyone, especially not the palace's high-ranking officials. They were either too loyal to the queen or too blind to see the threat lurking within their walls. No, if Marcus was going to expose the conspiracy, he had to do it quietly. He had to find the culprit without raising suspicion. As the days passed, Marcus felt the pressure mounting. The queen had not shown any signs of improvement. She was still unconscious, and her health was deteriorating faster than anyone had expected. The royal physicians had no answers, and the palace was filled with tension. The fear of what would happen next loomed over everyone like a dark cloud. One evening, as Marcus was walking through the quiet corridors near the queen's chambers, he caught a glimpse of something that made his heart race. Two figures, cloaked in shadow, were standing by a door. He couldn't make out their faces, but their presence was unmistakable. They were too quiet, too secretive. His instincts told him that they were involved in something they shouldn't be. Marcus paused, hidden behind a pillar, and waited. He watched as one of the figures slipped a small, thin object into a hidden compartment near the doorframe. It was a gesture so subtle it could have easily been missed. But Marcus had seen it, and his heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just a coincidence. As the figures walked away, Marcus moved toward the door. His curiosity pushed him forward, despite the risks. He knelt by the hidden compartment and carefully examined it. The small object was a key card, marked with the insignia of the Royal Council, the highest ruling body in the empire. But what was it doing here, in the Queen's private quarters? He slid the key card out, turning it over in his hands. The cold metal seemed to pulse with significance. This wasn't just a regular key card. It had access to restricted areas that no one outside the Royal Council should have been able to enter. Marcus knew he had to get answers. He couldn't just ignore what he had found. The key card was the first real lead he had. The first concrete piece of evidence that someone in the palace had access to more than they should. But the risks were enormous. Whoever was behind this wasn't playing games. They would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. His mind raced as he weighed his options. Should he report this to the Queen's inner circle, or should he take matters into his own hands and investigate further? He knew the palace was full of secrets, and any wrong move could get him killed. But he couldn't sit back and do nothing, not when the fate of the empire was at stake. Marcus decided to take the card to a trusted contact, a fellow guard named Dalen. Dalen was someone Marcus had known for years, and he had always been loyal. If there was anyone who could help him navigate this tangled mess, it was Dalen. That night, after the palace had quieted down, Marcus met Dalen in a secluded corner of the palace grounds. He handed Dalen the key card without a word, watching as his friend examined it carefully. "This is bad," Dalen said after a long pause. "This key card gives access to the Royal Council's most secure chambers, the kind of places we're not even allowed to look at, let alone enter. Whoever used this has high authority." Marcus nodded grimly. "That's what I was thinking. But why would someone need to access the Queen's chambers with a council key card? What's going on in there?" Dalen's eyes narrowed. It could be someone close to her, someone who knows her well enough to slip in unnoticed. Or it could be someone with their own agenda, someone looking to manipulate things from behind the scenes. Marcus swallowed hard. "I've seen signs of sabotage. Her heart condition, it's not natural. Someone is deliberately making her weaker, and I think I know who's behind it." "Who?" Dalen asked, his voice low with concern. Marcus hesitated, the weight of his discovery pressing on him. "I don't know yet, but I have a feeling it's someone within the Royal Council, someone with the means to manipulate her medical records and keep it all under wraps." Dalen looked around to make sure no one was watching. "This is dangerous, Marcus. If you're right, you're not just uncovering a conspiracy, you're going up against the highest powers in the Empire. This could start a civil war." "I know," Marcus said, his voice firm, "but I can't just stand by and let this happen. I need your help, Dalen. We have to find out who's behind this, and we have to do it fast." Dalen looked conflicted, but after a long moment he nodded. "All right, I'm with you. But we'll need to be careful. One wrong move, and this could all come crashing down." With Dalen's help, Marcus began to dig deeper into the palace's inner workings. They carefully observed the movements of the Royal Council members, paying attention to their every action. They knew the stakes were high, and they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. For days, they followed leads, gathering small pieces of information here and there. Everything pointed to the same conclusion: someone close to the Queen, someone in a position of power, had been working to weaken her. But who? The tension was building. Every day, the Queen's condition seemed to worsen, and Marcus felt the weight of the Empire's future pressing on him. He couldn't fail. He couldn't let the Queen fall without uncovering the truth. And then, just when Marcus thought he had reached a dead end, a breakthrough came. He was standing in the Royal Archives late one night, searching through old records, when he found a pattern in the Queen's medical history. The alterations to her records hadn't just happened recently. They had been going on for months, long before the collapse. Someone had been planning this for a long time, carefully orchestrating her downfall step by step. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest as he looked at the final piece of the puzzle, the name of the Royal Council member who had signed off on the last set of medical records. It was a name Marcus knew well, one that had always seemed too perfect, too well placed within the palace. The discovery had shaken Marcus to his very core. The name that appeared at the end of the royal medical records, Lord Kalen, a high-ranking member of the Royal Council, was one he had known for years. Kalen had always been regarded as loyal, a trusted ally of the Queen and a man of great influence within the Empire. He was one of the last people Marcus would have suspected of treachery, but the evidence was clear. Lord Kalen had signed off on the altered medical reports, granting permission for the Queen's condition to be concealed. He had been involved in the manipulation of her health from the very beginning. There was no denying it now. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Kalen had been a constant presence in the palace, respected by everyone and trusted by the Queen. To think that someone so close to the throne would be behind this sinister plot was almost impossible to believe. But the facts were undeniable. Marcus stood in the dimly lit room, the weight of the discovery pressing heavily on him. He had uncovered the truth, but now he faced a new challenge. What to do with it? He couldn't confront Kalen directly. Not yet. The man was far too powerful, and Marcus knew that a confrontation would only lead to disaster. Instead, he had to gather more information, find the final piece of the puzzle, and figure out how to expose Kalen's treachery without putting everything at risk. The more Marcus thought about it, the more he realized how dangerous the situation had become. If Kalen was behind the Queen's collapse, then it wasn't just about a simple power grab. This was about something much larger, something that could unravel the very fabric of the Empire. Marcus was no fool. He knew that Kalen wouldn't have acted alone. The conspiracy must have been carefully planned, with multiple players working together to bring down the Queen. But who else was involved? Who could Marcus trust to help him uncover the full extent of the plot? The answer came to him in a flash. Dalen. His fellow guard had been with him from the beginning, helping him piece together the mystery. Dalen was loyal, and Marcus trusted him more than anyone else in the palace. Together, they had uncovered the first clues, and now they were close to the truth. But the closer they got, the more dangerous the situation became. If they were wrong, if they exposed the wrong people or made a mistake, they could find themselves in grave danger. The palace was a web of secrets, and the more Marcus uncovered, the more he realized how fragile everything was. That night, Marcus met Dalen in a secluded corner of the palace grounds, away from prying eyes. He had to be careful. The walls had ears, and even the slightest slip-up could lead to disaster. Dalen looked nervous as he approached, his eyes scanning the area to make sure no one was following. "What's going on, Marcus? You've been acting strange lately." Marcus handed Dalen a small folded piece of paper, one that contained the name of Lord Kalen. "I found the man who's been behind the Queen's health problems," he said quietly. "It's Kalen. He's been manipulating her medical records, covering up her condition." Dalen's eyes widened in shock. "Kalen? Are you sure? He's one of the Queen's closest advisors. He's never shown any sign of betrayal." "I know," Marcus replied, his voice filled with frustration. "But it's all right here in these records. He signed off on everything. He's been hiding the truth about her health." Dalen shook his head in disbelief. "This doesn't make sense. If Kalen's behind this, it means he's planning something much bigger. We can't let him get away with it." Marcus nodded, his mind racing. "We need to find out who else is involved. This isn't just Kalen's doing. He's part of something much larger." "Who else could be involved?" Dalen asked, his voice filled with concern. "I don't know yet," Marcus said, "but we need to be careful. Kalen has too much power. If we're wrong, if we make one mistake, we could be finished." The two guards stood in silence for a moment, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on both of them. They knew that the path ahead would be dangerous, but there was no turning back now. The Queen's life was on the line, and they couldn't afford to let this treachery go unpunished. "We need to get to Kalen," Marcus said, his voice low. "We need to confront him, find out everything he knows, and expose him for what he is." Dalen looked uneasy. "We don't have enough evidence. We need to be smart about this." "I know," Marcus said, "but time is running out. The Queen is getting worse, and if we don't act soon, it might be too late." Dalen sighed, his face filled with concern. "All right, let's do it. But we need a plan. We can't just rush in blindly." Marcus agreed. They spent the next few hours discussing their options, coming up with a strategy to confront Kalen, without drawing too much attention. They knew they had to be careful. Kalen had spies everywhere, and one wrong move could expose them. The plan was simple. They would use the council keycard to gain access to Kalen's private office, a place few people had ever seen. Once inside, they would search for any evidence of his involvement in the plot against the Queen. If they could find the proof they needed, they would have the leverage to expose him. It was a risky plan, but it was the only option they had. If they were wrong, they could find themselves in grave danger, but Marcus was determined. The Queen's life was at stake, and he couldn't afford to let her fall victim to the hands of traitors. The next night, under the cover of darkness, Marcus and Dalen made their move. They slipped past the palace guards, careful not to attract attention, and made their way toward Kalen's office. The halls were eerily quiet, the silence only broken by the faint sound of their footsteps. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't let his nerves show. He had come too far to back out now. At last, they reached the door to Kalen's office. Dalen quickly inserted the key card into the lock, and the door clicked open. They stepped inside, the air heavy with tension. The room was filled with bookshelves, records, and ornate furniture. It was a place of power, a place where decisions were made that shaped the fate of the entire empire. Marcus and Dalen searched the room methodically, their eyes scanning every corner, every drawer, and every shelf. It wasn't long before they found it, a hidden compartment behind a painting, filled with documents and files, evidence of Kalen's treachery. The truth was clearer than ever. Kalen had been manipulating the Queen's medical records for months, slowly poisoning her with a substance designed to weaken her heart. He had been orchestrating the entire plot, working with other high-ranking officials to bring about the Queen's downfall. Marcus felt a surge of anger and disgust as he held the documents in his hands. This was it. The proof they needed to bring Kalen down. But just as they were about to leave, a voice echoed from the doorway. "Well, well," Lord Kalen said, stepping into the room, his expression cold and calculating. "It seems you've been busy, Marcus." The sound of Lord Kalen's voice sent a chill down Marcus's spine. He turned slowly, clutching the documents tightly in his hand. His mind raced, trying to process what was happening. How had Kalen found them? Had they been too careless? Or had Kalen been expecting them all along? Kalen's expression was one of calm confidence, a stark contrast to the tension in the air. His sharp eyes locked onto Marcus and Dalen, measuring them as if they were nothing more than pawns in a game he had already won. The door clicked shut behind him, trapping them inside. "I must admit I'm impressed," Kalen said, his voice smooth, almost cordial. "You've managed to get this far without anyone noticing, but you should have known it wouldn't be this easy." Marcus could feel his pulse quicken. Every instinct told him to act fast, find a way out, escape with the evidence, but he knew they couldn't just run, not now. Not when they had the truth in their hands. "We're not going anywhere, Kalen," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "You've been poisoning the Queen. You've been manipulating her health, controlling her life." Kalen's lips curled into a thin smile, but there was no warmth in it. "Poisoning her?" he repeated, as if the very idea amused him. "You have it all wrong, Marcus. I've been saving her." "Saving her?" Dalen's voice was incredulous. "You're the one who's been weakening her. She's been fighting for her life while you've been pulling the strings." Kalen took a slow step toward them, his presence as imposing as ever. "You're naive, Dalen. You don't understand the bigger picture. The Queen has been a symbol of power for too long. Her reign is a crumbling relic. It was never meant to last. The Empire needs change, real change, and I've been doing what was necessary to bring about that change." Marcus felt a sharp pang of disbelief. This was the man they had trusted, the man who had been so close to the Queen. He had been right there in the very heart of the Empire, using his power to destroy everything they had fought for. "You've been planning this for months," Marcus said, his voice hardening. "You've been hiding the truth from everyone, from the Queen, from the entire Empire." Kalen didn't deny it. "I've done what was necessary. The Queen is weak. She is not fit to rule anymore. The future of this empire depends on new leadership, on someone who can guide us into the next era." "And you thought you were the one to lead us?" Dalen's voice dripped with disdain. "By hurting the Queen? By betraying everyone who believed in her?" "I don't need to explain myself to you," Kalen snapped, his eyes flashing with anger. "I am above reproach. I am the one who truly understands what needs to be done. The Queen was a puppet, and now I am taking control." Marcus clenched his fists, the weight of what he was hearing sinking in. Kalen was not just a traitor. He was a man driven by ambition, willing to sacrifice everything and everyone for the sake of power. "I won't let you get away with this," Marcus said, his voice firm. Kalen's smile widened. "You think you can stop me? You're just a human guard. What do you think you can do against someone like me?" For a brief moment, Marcus felt a surge of doubt. Kalen had power, real power. He was connected to the highest echelons of the Royal Council, with influence over the entire empire. What chance did Marcus and Dalen have? But then he looked at the documents in his hand. They were proof of Kalen's betrayal. No matter how powerful Kalen was, the truth was on their side. "We have the evidence," Marcus said, holding the documents up. "The Queen will know the truth. The Empire will know the truth." Kalen's expression darkened. "You think exposing me will change anything? You're a fool if you believe that. The people don't care about the Queen's health. They care about power. They care about control." Marcus stepped forward, his resolve hardening. "The people care about the truth, and that's what they'll get." Kalen let out a sharp laugh. "You truly are naive, Marcus. You have no idea what's at stake. If you expose me, if you go public with these lies, the Empire will tear itself apart. You think the Queen can just step back onto the throne? You think the people will welcome her with open arms? She is finished, and so are you." Marcus's heart raced, but he stood his ground. He wasn't going to let Kalen intimidate him. This was bigger than fear. This was about justice. It was about saving the Empire from the very man who had been poisoning it from the inside out. "I won't let you do this," Marcus said. "We'll take the evidence to the council. We'll expose you for what you are." Kalen's face twisted in rage. "You think you can take me down? You think the council will listen to you? They're loyal to me, not to the Queen. You're nothing more than a pawn." "Maybe," Marcus said, meeting Kalen's gaze. "But the people aren't pawns, and they deserve to know the truth." Kalen stepped back, a dark glint in his eye. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. You think you can just walk away from this?" Dalen, who had remained silent up until this point, finally spoke. "What's your plan, Kalen? To keep lying? To keep destroying everything the Queen built? You're not going to win?" Kalen's lips curled into a sinister smile. "We'll see about that, won't we?" Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the hallway, a series of hurried footsteps approaching fast. The sound was unmistakable. Guards. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. How had they found them so quickly? Kalen's eyes flicked to the door, then back to Marcus and Dalen. "You've made a mistake," he said, his voice low and threatening. "Now you'll pay for it." He turned to leave, but Marcus acted quickly. With a swift motion, he lunged forward and blocked the door, standing firm. "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said. "You're not getting away with this." Kalen's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Marcus could see the raw anger in them. But then Kalen took a deep breath, his posture relaxing. He wasn't afraid. He was calm, calculated, ready for whatever came next. "Then we'll see how far you're willing to go," Kalen said. "But know this, if you choose to stand against me, you stand against the future of the Empire." Marcus felt a cold shiver run down his spine. Kalen's words weren't just a threat. They were a warning of the chaos that would follow if they exposed him. But Marcus knew one thing for sure. The truth was more important than anything. The Queen had suffered enough, and the Empire deserved a chance to heal. He wouldn't let Kalen destroy everything. As the sound of guards drew closer, Marcus made his decision. He had a choice to fight for the Queen's legacy and expose Kalen for the traitor he was, or walk away and let the Empire fall into chaos. There was no choice at all. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hallway, growing louder with each passing second. Marcus stood firm in front of the door, blocking Kalen's path. His heart pounded in his chest, but his resolve remained unshaken. He knew that this was it, the moment where everything would change. Kalen's gaze shifted to the door, then back to Marcus, and finally to Dalen. A cold smile tugged at the corners of his lips. "You really think you can stop me? You're just two guards. Do you honestly believe you stand a chance?" Marcus didn't flinch. His mind was clear, focused. This wasn't just about him. This was about saving the Queen, protecting the Empire from the treachery that had poisoned it from within. He had no illusions about the danger they were in, but he also knew that if they didn't act now, Kalen would continue to manipulate the Empire for his own gain. "Move!" Kalen ordered, his voice icy with authority. Marcus shook his head. "Not until you explain yourself. Not until the truth is revealed." Kalen's eyes narrowed, his once confident demeanor slipping for just a moment. He looked like a man who had suddenly realized that things weren't going according to plan. But he quickly regained his composure. "You think you can stop me?" Kalen repeated, more forcefully this time. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. The Queen was a liability, and now she is a dead weight on this empire. She was, never meant to rule forever. I'm the one who can bring this empire into a new age, one of strength and progress. Your Queen is nothing more than a fading symbol. I've been doing what was necessary." His words sent a chill through Marcus. He had heard Kalen's justification before, the idea that progress required sacrifices. But what Kalen didn't understand was that the Queen had always been the strength of the Empire. It wasn't her reign that had weakened the Empire, it was the corruption that festered inside, the betrayal of those closest to her. "We won't let you destroy her legacy," Marcus said firmly. "We won't let you tear the Empire apart for your own selfish ambitions." Kalen scoffed, stepping closer to Marcus. "You have no idea what's at stake. You think you can just expose me and everything will go back to normal? The truth is the Queen's time has passed. She was never fit to lead. I am the future." Marcus took a deep breath. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Kalen was a man of immense power, and exposing him would send shockwaves through the Empire. But it wasn't just about the Queen anymore. It was about ensuring that the Empire didn't fall into the hands of someone like Kalen, someone willing to destroy everything for personal gain. "We have the evidence," Marcus said, holding the documents up. "The truth is in these papers. You can't hide it anymore." Kalen's eyes flicked to the documents, and for the first time a flicker of doubt crossed his face. "You think this will change anything?" he sneered. "The Council is loyal to me. They will never side with you. You're wasting your time." "But the people?" Dalen spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "The people will know the truth. The truth is stronger than your lies." Kalen's lips curled into a wicked smile. "The people?" he laughed. "The people don't care about your truth. They care about power, and I am the one who holds the power." Marcus stepped forward, blocking Kalen's path again. "You're wrong. The people care about justice. They care about the truth, and we'll make sure they get it." Kalen's expression darkened. "You're making a grave mistake, Marcus. If you expose me, the Empire will crumble. There will be chaos. You'll be responsible for the destruction of everything." Marcus's heart pounded, but his mind remained clear. He had already made his decision. The truth had to come out. Kalen had been manipulating everything from the shadows, and the Empire could not survive under his rule. "We can't let you keep this up," Marcus said. "You've already done enough damage. You've poisoned the Queen and the Empire, and now we're going to stop you." For a long moment, there was silence. Kalen's eyes bored into Marcus's, a mixture of hatred and disbelief. He had underestimated them, thought that his power and influence would protect him. But now, in this moment, he realized that his empire of lies was about to crumble. "I won't let you expose me," Kalen said, his voice dangerously low. "You think you can just waltz in here and take me down? You have no idea what you're up against." The sound of guards' footsteps grew louder, and Kalen turned quickly, his eyes scanning the room. But instead of retreating, he stood his ground. "I will not be stopped," he said, his voice low and threatening. "If you think you can take me down, you'll have to do it over my dead body." Marcus and Dalen exchanged a quick glance. They didn't have much time left. The guards were closing in, and soon the entire palace would be swarming with enemies. But Marcus wasn't afraid. He had the truth on his side, and that was all that mattered. Before Kalen could make his next move, Marcus lunged forward, gripping the documents tightly in his hand. He shoved them toward Kalen. "This is over. Kalen, it's time for the truth to come out." Kalen hesitated, his eyes flicking to the documents. His facade of control was beginning to crack. For a brief moment, he seemed almost human again, vulnerable, exposed. But then, just as quickly, his cold, calculating demeanor returned. "Won't be stopped," Kalen repeated, his voice a low growl. Marcus felt a surge of determination. He stepped back, his hands raised slightly, preparing for whatever came next. Dalen stood beside him, equally resolute. The door to the office suddenly burst open and a group of guards flooded into the room, their weapons drawn. Kalen's eyes flicked to them, then back to Marcus and Dalen. His expression hardened, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. "This is it, Kalen," Marcus said. "It's over." The guards paused for a moment, uncertain of whose side they should take. They had been loyal to the Queen, but now they were faced with a choice: side with the traitor who had tried to destroy everything, or side with the truth. In the tense silence, one of the guards, a tall alien named Thalor, stepped forward. His eyes flicked between Marcus and Kalen. "We know the truth," Thalor said quietly. "We've been watching. We've been listening." "The people deserve to know." Kalen's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. But it was too late. The truth had already started to spread, and nothing could stop it now. As the guards began to arrest Kalen, Marcus felt a strange sense of relief. The Empire would change now. Whether it was for better or worse, only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the Queen would know the truth, and the Empire would rebuild. The battle had been long, but in the end, the truth had triumphed.